board member. The mic is already hot, so it's already live. Just talk about this far away from it.
Okay.
This is the clicker to advance through your slides. This is the only one you should need.
Sure.
That's forward, and just in case you accidentally go too far, that's back.
Okay.
Questions?
So I'm not very tall, and the podium kind of is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd
You're
also.
certainly welcome to move that.
Okay, but this, I do need to stay behind the podium with this in its keeper, or.
You mean like what's best practice for school board?
Well, I've presented to them before,
Mm-hmm.
in different context a little bit. But yes, would it be expected? Would make it easier for you all to keep that in place and for me to stay here than for me to remove it and walk or stand more like here? Because if I'm referencing. Okay, all right. Okay. Thanks so much.
Good?
I think so. Thank you.
Audio test. case you go too far. That one's back. You don't need to worry about that one.
Okay.
And I noticed in your slideshow that the YouTube videos are set to manual play, so
Okay.
which is perfectly fine. So as soon as you're ready, just look at me and give me a wave, and I'll
Okay.
press play. And there's two of them, right? There's one.
One near the
you might-
beginning, one almost towards the end.
Okay. I'll keep an eye on the slides and make sure I'm ready to just click play.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Cool.
So you can set them to begin as the slide changes.
You can.
Okay. In Google's.
YouTube, actually, I'm not sure with YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll check it out though. I know you can start from a certain place, but you still have to click play. But yeah, that would be ideal. So. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Did you make any changes since 4 o'clock?
Yeah, not since then. Yeah. All right. Cool. Sounds good, man. Thanks.
We were. Left with pauses from our Veterans Day ceremony.
Oh yeah, thanks for forwarding those. That was he was great. He did a nice job.
that a typo or is that for real?
Yeah, they're in closed meeting right now.
Oh, so that's not, but then, okay.
So they were open in the beginning. They went into closed meeting, so they're currently in closed meeting.
Gotcha, okay.
And then they're getting ready to come back out of closed meeting.
When you're advancing slides, that one goes forward,
Yeah.
and in case you go too far, that one goes back. You don't have to worry about
Yeah.
that one.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Is there anything I have to do for the setup part, or are you gonna just pull it up?
Nope.
To
As
begin
soon,
with.
as soon as you guys walk up here, then Rad, your principal, will signal me to open the presentation, and you'll just be able to walk up and start talking.
All right. Thank you,
Good?
sir.
All right. Good luck.
welcome this evening. The board has voted to exit closed meeting and re-enter into public meeting. And I know we need to have a motion that we only talked about those things in closed meeting that were contained in the original motion under Virginia statute.
I move to certify to the best of each member's knowledge that 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements under Virginia Freedom Act, Information Act. Under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed in closed meeting to which this were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Cross.
Chair Breeden,
Aye.
Mr. Cross,
Aye.
Mr. Falk,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lohr,
Aye.
Dr. McQuilkin.
Aye.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask that all who are able to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, would you join us in the observance of a moment of silence? Thank you. Before we move into recognitions and presentations, can I see a show of hands of the students that we have in the audience tonight? Welcome. Welcome. There you go. Any board member will be pleased to sign your documentation at the close of the meeting for verification of your attendance. But thank you and welcome for being here. Mr. Danzy.
Mr. Breeden, how are you this evening?
Great.
It's my honor this evening to welcome you all to Spotswood High School for the board meeting, and also to take the opportunity to recognize some incredible folks in our community who exemplify what it means to be a trailblazer. So, Chairman Breeden, Dr. Scheichel, member of the boards, I present to you our first recipient of the Brittany Lamb Kelly Cogsdale Character Counts recipient. If Danita Volmarounds would please join me up here. Danita is recognized by our teachers as the Spotswood High School Brittany Lamb Kelly Cogsdale Character Counts recipient based on her willingness to take the time and spend the energy to help others grow. When I first really was able to get to know Danita during her junior year, I was immediately impressed with the manner in which she interacted with her peers and teachers. It was obvious to me that she was a special young lady who has the ability to be a powerful and positive influence on others. Her teachers share the same sentiment about Danita. Ms. Kisshorn, Spotswood science teacher, shares that Danita has really grown into become an amazing leader within our Spotswood community. She is dedicated to her studies and asks insightful questions to learn more about a variety of subjects just because she loves learning. She is the type of student who will work well with any student out of our 900 plus students at Spotswood and will try to get the most out of them. She has taken it upon herself to start several clubs as a strong voice within those clubs. I am so proud of her. Ms. Kisshorn is not alone in her admiration for Danita. Ms. Webb, Spotswood business teacher, added, Danita is a terrific Spotswood citizen and a pleasure to have in class. She is bright and creative and genuinely cares about helping other students. Danita is also a sincere interest in the greater good and wants to make our world a better place. We're so fortunate to have Danita as a trailblazer. Her positivity and her good citizenship are contagious and welcomed. Earlier this school year, Danita and one of her closest friends shared their hope of beginning a future female leaders club at Spotswood High School. I asked them to create a proposal and find a potential adult sponsor. Within a week, Danita was back in my office with her friend to share an incredible opportunity for students at Spotswood. They have scheduled speakers and events for each club day to inspire others to work towards a goal. Ms. Bean, Spotswood English teacher and the future female leader sponsor, offered this about Danita. Danita is one of the founders of the Future Female Leaders Club. She is kind, thoughtful, and a good student. Danita is someone her classmates turn to because she is a sympathetic listener. She is a mature and intelligent young woman. With her involvement in Sources of Strength and the Future Female Leaders Club, Danita is willing to give of her time to make Spotswood a better place for her peers. In doing so, she is making the most out of her high school experience to set the stage for the next chapter of her life's journey. I have no doubt it will have a storyline of service to others. Congratulations, Danita, for epitomizing the ideals that Spotswood High School and the Brittany Lamb Kelly Cogsdale Character Council Award recipient requires. Congratulations and thank you so much. Obed, would Obed please come down and join me? Obed Lopez Vasquez is recognized by his teachers as a Spotswood High School Brittany Lamb Kelly Cogsdale Character Counts Award recipient based on the incredible spirit that he shares with everyone he comes into contact with each day. I am appreciative to have had the privilege of watching Obed grow into a young man who works hard in all aspects of school. When asking teachers about Obed, the words kind, energetic, and caring are often used. His teachers and coaches were asked to share a few words about Obed. The following comments were made. Obed is very energetic. He is always polite and respectful. He is always willing to lend a helping hand. Obed is thoughtful and energetic young man with a generous spirit. He generally cares about those around him. Obed is pleasant and positive and works well with his fellow students. He focuses in class and communicates well to stay on top of his assignments. He is an example of accountability and optimism that make him a terrific trailblazer. It is clear from these words, Obed has earned the respect of the Spotswood staff. Ms. Kishorn, Spotswood science teacher, shared the following. He is a fantastic person who embodies what it means to be an accepting and kind trailblazer. He is friends with many students from various backgrounds and goes out of his way to brighten the room and bring personality and humor to the class. The thing I remember most about Obed is when he made a huge Go Blazers poster with basketballs all over it for the unified basketball game, and he cheered for students the entire time. A similar sentiment is shared by Ms. Joyner, Spotswood math teacher. Obed is a student in my analysis class this year. He is a ray of light in the class. Every day he comes prepared and ready to learn. He is engaged and asks questions. He is not interested in only getting the answers right, he wants to know the why. He never complains, and once I give an assignment, he always is the first to get started. He interacts in such a positive way with his peers and can make even the most challenging math concepts seem fun. That's impressive. He leads by example. And she says, I wish I had 1,000 Obeds in class. That's awesome. I personally have come to enjoy our short conversations in the hallways and on the sidelines during football games. as he's always looking for the positives in life. Obed is a living idea of blaze of respect that we strive for all of our students. Obed, please know that your kindness is noticed by teachers and students alike at Spotswood, and they are excited and proud that you are being recognized as a recipient of this award. Congratulations, and please continue to lead others with the enthusiasm and care that we need in our community. Congratulations. It is now my honor to recognize Ms. Paula Lamb. Paula is an outstanding volunteer for Spotswood High School. As a school, having parents and members of our community coming together to assist in the educational mission is essential. This has been especially true as we've navigated the past few years. In many ways, parents have willingly stepped up to recognize teachers and organize events. Among our volunteers, Paula quickly became my go-to to help make the seemingly impossible a reality. Paul has a genuine care for the students at Spotswood High and is willing to move mountains to provide them with the opportunities to enjoy their high school experience. In my time of desperation, as I was attempting to put together an after-prom event for our students who had not had a prom since the spring of 2019, Paula's name was given to me by several parents. They all shared that if anyone could pull an event together, it was Paula Lamb. When I called her, I shared that, 1, we were now able to host a prom, 2, that I would like to give our students an after-prom, and 3, we have about 4 weeks to make it all happen. Without hesitation, she said she would come and make it happen for our students. Within a few days, she had put together a collection of Spotswood parents, some former trailblazers, who put together an event that provided our students with an incredible experience and the revival of our Blazer Bash. Working with Paula and the parent committee was as much fun for the parent group as it was for the students who participated in the activities. So as I approached the summer of 22, I once again called on Paula for a helping hand. During the restrictions of COVID, our Parent-Teacher Association, Student Association, folded. This association is a key resource for a successful school as it allows Spotswood to draw on the talents of our community. When asking Paula if she would be willing to help with this endeavor, she did not hesitate. Within several weeks, a group of parents were called on, and the PTSA was reborn. This was not as easy as the statement makes it seem. Due to Paula's dedication, our first full PTSA meeting had 15 parents attend, which was about 4 times as many as we've had in the past. Paula's understanding of the division of duties and her ability to work with and encourage others allowed folks to be involved without being overwhelmed with responsibilities. I'm excited about the direction our meetings have gone under Paula's leadership. On top of these responsibilities, Paula is also a member of the Spotswood Athletic Booster Club, where she serves as a board member to assist our athletic director and student athletes to have the items needed to assist them to be successful. I'm not sure how she does all that she does for Spotswood while being a Spotswood mom, a local business owner, and a full-time Jamie employee. I can say that I am grateful that she is willing and able to balance all this pretty well. Paula, thank you for saying yes many times, now and in the future, for the benefit of our students, our families, and our teachers. You are truly an outstanding Blazer volunteer. Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to introduce our students who are going to present on deliberative democracy. This is a project that's been going on in Spotswood now for 2 years under the leadership of Mr. Longacre and Mr. Shanahan, and this is an exciting process that we're working through at Spotswood High School. Guys, it's all yours.
Good afternoon. I will begin the presentation. I'm sorry. All right, so I will begin now. Deliberate Democracy began as a collaboration between our school and James Madison University last spring. It opened doors for the Youth in Government and Social Studies Honor Society clubs to work together along with 6 graduate students and Dr. Diller from JMU. Deliberate Democracy includes everyone. It is an intentionally long, conscious, and careful conversation about subjects that impact or will potentially impact everybody in the student body. Deliberate Democracy exists in order to include all voices. Yes. All right. Then, thank you. A few weeks ago, every student interested met at the library. We were placed into 3 different groups and tables and given worksheets with 3 options offering different levels of free speech. Dr. Diller explained that through a series of rotations between groups, we would be discussing which of the 3 options would be the best to apply in our school environment. Each group had a maximum of 2 JMU students. They each asked questions related to the option and allow us to continue the conversation amongst ourselves. Every 15 minutes, we would rotate to different tables with different people to discuss other options in order to have other opinions amongst ourselves, in order to have free ideals of every single option that we were presented. Violet?
Okay, so we had 3 different options that each student could choose which one they preferred. Option 1 is to prioritize student safety and well-being. This option highlights student safety and well-being of faculty and staff from potential harassment and discrimination from the impact of harmful speech. Those who chose option 1 favor student safety physically and emotionally over all else. Threats to safety and education would be eliminated to protect students when necessary. Drawbacks of option 1, an environment that limits speech doesn't always provide students the opportunity to debate sensitive topics. Next is option 2, to affirm the educational value of intellectual curiosity and engaging with ideals across differences. This option asserts the primary role of higher education is to encourage intellectual curiosity and to build student skills to engage meaningfully in difficult conversations. Those who choose option 2 believe learning often requires discomfort. Instead of limiting the discomfort, students should use it to guide them through interpreting their feelings, thoughts, and ideas that make them uncomfortable. Exposing students to a spectrum of perspectives teaches them to question their assumptions, and clarify their bases, their own values, develop their own ideas, and give them an understanding of how to respond to those who they disagree with. Drawbacks of option 2 are students may be exposed to ideas that are potentially harmful. This option requires students to be in control of their emotions and to have a peaceful conversation. And lastly was option 3, which is uphold the ideals of free speech. This option argues that education should welcome free speech in all its forms. Educational environments should include public debate and provide space for diverse opinions and ideas, even when they are potentially controversial or offensive. Drawbacks of option 3, like option 2, students may be exposed to harmful ideas. This option may also reinforce or worsen barriers for historically marginalized groups and might only benefit historically privileged groups whose members already hold voice and power.
So, all in all, the whole deliberative democracy experience brought many good results. Across the board, everyone there was very respectful to one another. New voices were heard from people that we didn't know, and we could experience them. A lot of the great perspectives were shared of different options that we were discussing, as well as the opinions on the deliberative democracy format. After we were discussing the different options, most of us came to the same conclusion. Most all of the people who participated in the discussions picked option number 2. There were a few people who picked option number 3, which gave total free speech, and there were no students who picked option 1, which prioritized safety over any speech. When we discussed why most students picked option 2, it was mainly because it offered the best of both worlds. Many of us believe that it gave students both the safety and from the oppression of their voices and from hurtful comments, as well as the chance to share their opinions and discuss certain matters. Before the start of the discussions, we had to rank the options given, and most of us put option 3 as the best option. By the end of the deliberation, almost all of us picked option 2 as the best option. After experiencing at Spotswood what deliberative democracy was, we are going to meet at JMU on the 2nd of December to produce our own deliberative democracy forums on the new upcoming RCPS safety plan. When at GMU, we will be making our own deliberative democracy outline papers like the ones shown on the board. This way we know how to use this new style of debating, and for our future purposes, we can use it to make more inclusive discussions. Thank you.
Congratulations to all those who were recognized tonight, and thank you all for the presentation. That was very informative. We will move to the FFA Science Fair project. Dr. Scheichel.
So this is another piece in the presentations part of the agenda. So when I had the opportunity to be at the National FFA Convention a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to judge prepared public speaking, but then also had the opportunity to see student presentations in competitions. And one of the competitions was the FFA Science Fair, and in the social sciences category, I got to see a presentation very relevant to our time, very relevant to our community, and it was amazing it was the only presentation I saw where the judges then came over to the student and just showed their appreciation for that presentation and how impressed they were with it. And it was one of our students. And so since we're not going to be a TA for a while, I thought it was a good time today, again, since we also talked about more presentations about educational topics, to allow that student to present and to introduce her. We have Mr. Brian Krickenberger from TA, who is her FFA advisor. Brian?
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. As I start out, I want to say thank you, first of all, to Dr. Scheichel, to our CT Director, Eric Fitzgerald, and School Board Member, Ms. Lohr, for traveling to the National FFA Convention and spending, 15 hours on a train with us all together? Thank you. It means a lot to us. This evening, Audrey Garrison is going to represent the Agri-Science Fair contest, and kind of how this all got started. Back in June, she competed at our state contest in Blacksburg. She was recognized as a state winner at that time. Over the summer, we had to submit her project to National FFA, where she was selected as one of the top 10 national finalists in her category. By being selected as a national finalist, she had the opportunity to travel to the National Convention to participate and hopefully come out in good standing, which I think she did. She also had the very special opportunity to be on the showcase stage, which is a brand new opportunity that they had at the convention this year. So she was able to give a presentation there, and that's what she's going to share with you this evening. And we also want to say that she did place 9th in her category for the Agri-Science Fair. So, Audrey?
Excuse me. Good evening, Dr. Scheichel, members of the board, community members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. As Mr. Krickenberger said, I'm Audrey Garrison. I'm a junior in the Turner Ashby High School FFA chapter, and just recently I was at National Convention where I presented a presentation very similar to this one. So prior to convention, and this is what was judged, I completed research on drug and alcohol use within Virginia's agricultural community. The project and the research was really threefold. It surveyed about 60 members of Virginia's agricultural community who are involved in all different ways to identify three things. The first, whether or not drug and alcohol use is an issue within the agriculture community. If it is, why? And third, what can we do to lessen the effects that drug and alcohol use have on the agricultural community? Because it's a big effect. So, what we found in the project, that the top three factors that cause drug and alcohol use are mental health issues, physical pain, and in very few cases, pleasure. So we're gonna talk about the first one mostly. Stress and anxiety, that is just really a part of being in the agriculture community with the changing economy and the weather and everything else, causes a lot of mental health issues, and so people turn to drugs and alcohol in some cases to help lessen the stress and lessen the anxiety. What we found is that a lot of people, about 50% of the survey takers, didn't even realize that drug and alcohol use was an issue, which is part of the issue. If people aren't aware of it, it's really hard to work with it and to figure out how to solve it. So we then asked, what was the accessibility of treatment and rehabilitation in the agricultural community and within Virginia's rural areas? And the general consensus is that it's not super accessible, which makes those mental health issues worse because you can't take time and days and weeks off the farm to go to a rehabilitation facility, which might be what it has to happen for you to receive effective results. And then the third was, what can we do about drug and alcohol use that would lessen the impact? And so people said education for everybody, for people my age, for adults, to address what does drug and alcohol use do to you? It has a negative impact, and some people just truly don't realize that. So helping people understand that, and also education about the resources and the opportunities that are available for you to address the issue, or to address your needs, your mental health needs, or your drug and alcohol rehabilitation needs. And then providing mental health resources, so providing healthy outlets for that, providing counseling, providing different forms of therapy would be the biggest factor, because not only would it address those issues, it would in turn address the self-medication and the drug and alcohol use that happens as a result of that stress and anxiety. So having treatment options and facilities and resources available to a wider group of people and geographically available, financially available, and then also just destigmatizing the fact that those resources are there and they're okay to use. Nobody's gonna think you're less of a man for doing it. Being able to provide those resources would then in turn lessen the need people feel to use drugs and alcohol. And so the next slide is what I called the why. So this was something that wasn't even in my research as a question or as a quantitative piece of data. But what it asked was, please share your personal experience with drugs and alcohol use in the agricultural community. And what it did is it gave people the opportunity anonymously, because the survey was anonymous, to share their experience with drugs and alcohol, whether it was their personal or that of their family members or their friends. So you see some up there. And this information here was more valuable than any data or any number that I found in the research, because it gave the research a reason. It gave purpose for the research that I did, and it said it was important to people, and it needed to happen because it hasn't happened a lot. So what people said is that, yeah, I dealt with it, or my neighbor did it, and they lost their farm, or it's tearing apart families, and that was amazing, because the other thing, the connection that could be made is that the majority of the people who submitted the survey were between 50 and 60 years old, and so that directly echoes the reality that most farmers in Virginia are about 58 years old. So if you think about it, and they're mostly male, so if you think about it, those 50 to 60-year-old males were raised in a time where you're not so much gonna go out and say, hey, I need some help, or hey, I'm really stressed. So the fact that on an anonymous platform, these individuals who if you were to talk to them, aren't going to burden you or anybody else with their issues. They were willing to say, it's hard, it's stressful, we need help. And so that was why I continued doing the research, and that's the motivation that I have to really hope to continue to implement that research in a manner that, like I said, is effective and destigmatized and accessible to people within our industry, because it's not necessarily widely known, but it is widely impactful. So thank you all. I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you, Audrey, and also thanks to the Spotswood students. Big questions of our time, right? When it comes to free speech, when it comes to mental health, and it's amazing to see the knowledge and the thoughtfulness of our students. So thank you for those presentations, and also thanks to the teachers who brought the students to that opportunity for the event at JMU and what comes next. So thanks to both of you.
Thank you. Before we leave our recognitions, and we know now part of the reason why, I'd like to recognize Sally Wolf Garrison, the Board of Supervisor member, for being here with us, but I won't ask you to say anything because that would be hard to follow. So thank you for being here and for sharing your daughter with us. All right. We will now move into the public comment section of our meeting, and the same rules will apply as have been standard protocol for this year. There will be 3 minutes, and at the 2.5-minute mark, I will gavel once, which will give the speaker notice that there will be 30 seconds left, and we will begin with Mr. Michael Stemple.
I just want to say, if we could all speak as eloquent as the young lady before me. Thank you, Dr. Board, Dr. Scheichel, for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Mike Stemple. I'm from the Broadway area. I would like to remind the board again the importance of rejecting the model policy proposed by the Youngkin administration as it relates to the treatment of transgender students. The policy will be harmful to trans youth as it does not implement best practices as recommended by medical professionals. In addition to creating harmful policies for children, the Youngkin Department of Education is trying to revise history and social studies standards for K through 12 education. In her letter to Susan Wise Bauer, Sheila Bird Carmichael, the consultant who presented the Youngkin Department of Education revised standards, along with the Department of Education Superintendent Jillian Balo, used these words to describe the standards: deeply flawed, very hastily and irresponsibly prepared. She even mentioned in that letter that she wished she had removed herself from the process altogether. Governor Youngkin mentioned omissions and mistakes and noted that he was disappointed in the document. Regardless, the majority Youngkin-appointed board voted to use this deeply flawed, very hastily and irresponsibly prepared document as the template to work from. Why does this matter? History helps us understand essential questions such as who we are as individuals, collective groups, and who we are as a nation. It helps us understand the why of the current social order. One thing I like about history is that history has the receipts. For example, if I want to find out what the Civil War was about, I'll read the words of key leaders involved, including those who called for the creation of a separate coalition of states. In Savannah, Georgia, on March 22nd, 1861, Alexander H. Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, said the following. In what became, I'm not going to quote it, but I'll give you a summary. In what became known as the Cornerstone Speech, Stephens clearly states racial superiority and slavery as the cornerstone of the newly formed Confederacy. History has the receipts. Why have we heard alternatives to this reality and to the main cause of war was slavery and the feeling of racial superiority? Because of who controlled the historical narrative. It has been said that the South lost the war but won the battle for the historical narrative surrounding the war. We cannot allow false narratives to persist, and more to come in future meetings. We're going to talk about textbooks next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Holly Cave.
I'm Holly Cave, mom of four, taxpayer, citizen, stakeholder in District 5. And I'm here tonight to provide some feedback on the capital improvement plan requests that were presented at the last school board meeting. Elkton Middle School, according to the spreadsheet that we saw last week or 2 weeks ago, was the only middle school that's currently over capacity for student population. In fact, they're the only school that was over capacity in the county, and yet Elkton Middle School is not as quoted on the horizon for additions or renovations. And that school is overpopulated, and according to your own educators even, it's busting at the seams. The students there do not have room to eat in that cafeteria. I noticed the last time I was there, it's actually been expanded since I was in school there, which is great, but it's still not holding these kids to eat their lunches. And so as an alternative, they're in the auditorium, they're in classrooms, they're all over the school. And as we know, middle school is a rat race anyways. When they come from 5th grade, they move into that environment, it really is a rat race. And to just have 20 minutes during the day to eat your lunch, they don't have that. And yet there's a high school that we're looking at paying $70 million to renovate when that school's population is likely to be reduced by the completion of Broadway's addition. And so the idea is also floated around of moving our 8th graders to East Rock. And the parents in our district are emphatically against that. They're like, that's a big no. Not just the parents, but the educators and administrators by their own admission say those students are not ready to go into high school. There's this falsehood that they would be segregated into, a wing of East Rock, but they're going to share the same parking lots, and they're going to share the same bathrooms, and they're going to share the gyms. I mean, they're going to run into the rest of the population there. It's just going to happen. And even if, wild idea, they were completely segregated, I mean, what kind of life is that for them in 8th grade? They've looked forward to being an 8th grader since they were a 6th grader, and maybe actually even a 5th grader. They've looked forward to it. I remember my 8th grade year was the best year of middle school, and it's just being snatched away from them. And so I would just ask you tonight to really think long and hard before we would approve the capital improvement plan requests as they've been presented, and also give that same thought long and hard to moving our 8th graders prematurely into high school. Thank you.
That concludes our list of speakers who have signed up for this evening. We will move now to highlights by board members. And I will begin with Mr. Falk. Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. First of all, we'd like to thank the staff at Spotswood High School for hosting us this evening. Thank you for not putting us on the stage and having us down here. We like it. We like to be on this level. So thank you very much for your hospitality. Secondly, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, or at least I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving and a restful time. We're back in school to start again. And thirdly, I'd like to talk about the fact that there were several of us from the school board who went to Williamsburg the week before Thanksgiving for the Virginia School Boards Association meeting, and it was an annual meeting that happens every year at this time, and we found it very enlightening, and it's always good to hear about other things that other school boards are doing across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And lastly, I'd like to issue an invitation from Chris Knoll, who is the principal of Turner Ashby, And he said he's inviting all the school board members to come tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. There will be a social reception for Larry S. Pence, because during the boys' basketball game in the intermission, the middle of the game, they will announce that the gymnasium is being named the Larry S. Pence Gymnasium. So all school board members are welcome, and certainly members of the public. We hope that you will join the TA family at that time.
Thank you. Ms. Lohr?
Thank you. I would like to reiterate what Dr. McQuilkin said. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I had a super busy Thanksgiving and spent the whole day exhausted and like, oh, I have to go to a school board meeting tonight. But one of the highlights now is that I was here because I got to see a great presentation from our students, and always love seeing Audrey. We go way back, and I'm so very proud of how well she represented the state of Virginia, because there were only 4 students from the entire state of Virginia that competed nationally and in the Ag Science Fair. So I'm very proud of you and wanted to say that publicly. I'm so glad you were here tonight. I also want to thank Mr. Fitzgerald for making that trip possible for all the students, because Mr. Krickenberger, Dr. Scheichel spent 15 hours on the train. The rest of us spent 30 hours on the train. But Mr. Fitzgerald made it possible and made it a wonderful trip. And I met the most lovely lady on the train who saved, tip for everybody here, she saved $300 by riding the train from like Huntington, West Virginia to Charleston, West Virginia, and called it her leaf peeping trip. So it was a beautiful time. It's a great time to travel by train, and that's a great tip if you want to like hop on the train in Stanton and go to Charlottesville and then turn it around and come back. It's like $75 instead of the $375 they charge for the scenic tour. But it was a wonderful time, and Mr. Fitzgerald did a lot to put that together, so I'd like to thank him too. But we also did, before thanks, I'm also looking forward to seeing Mr. Pence's dedication tomorrow. Thank you for bringing that to the group, Dr. McQuilkin. That should be a wonderful experience. I hope everybody can come out for that. But I also got to attend the Williamsburg Conference, and I learned a whole lot of great things that I'm hoping to bring back to Rockingham County. So thank you to everyone for your support. Thank you for being here tonight, and I'm going to pass it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you to everyone that came out tonight, and especially to those who spoke and received awards. It's a great opportunity to be here at Spotswood High School at the Wood tonight, and it's never a burden to come to these meetings. It's always a privilege to serve as a school board member at these meetings, and to come out to hear the public's concerns and also to hear all the great things that are happening inside of our public schools. Tonight, I want to highlight number one, the custodial staff here at Spotswood High School. I saw over our Thanksgiving break the basketball gym that they had resanded and did all the work in there. It looks nice. Basketball season is getting ready to begin. I'm looking forward to coming to some games up here and seeing Spotswood win like we always do. So thank you to everyone that came out tonight. I'm looking forward to other presentations that are here. And again, thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Dr. Scheichel.
First, thank you to Rad and his team for hosting us. Always a pleasure to be here at Spotswood. I also want to thank the Peakview kindergartners for inviting me to their Thanksgiving feast last week. Parents provided a wonderful meal to the students, and it was a lot of fun to be there and open milk cartons or take the drinks to the kids, and they had a blast. Next, I also want to say thank you to Sheriff Hutchison. He's been able to secure the 3rd SRO in the group of 4 that we were hoping to hire in the middle schools, so there's 1 more to go. But Deputy Samantha Klein will begin at J. Frank Hilliard on December 12th. So thank you to her for serving, and thank you to Sheriff Hutchison for making that possible. And then finally, we've talked about this before, every year, this is related to the VSBA convention, every year points are collected for how many events board members attend and how many education opportunities they take advantage of. And as in pretty much every year, the board member who stood out in the VSBA Academy Awards is Dr. McQuilkin. And when we talked about this at the county government building, I said, if only I had an Academy Award for her, an Oscar. And wouldn't you know it, thank you to Cecile Deason, who teaches at Wilbur-Pence and TA. I can finally present the Academy Award for Outstanding VSBA Education to Dr. McQuilkin. Here you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I, too, would just echo the sentiments of all of my colleagues in thanking the staff here at Spotswood for welcoming us this evening. I never attended Spotswood High School. I was part of the last graduating class from what was then Montevideo High School. But I've had 2 sons graduate from here, and I have 3 grandchildren on track to attend here one day. And as I sit here tonight and think about the many wonderful memories that I've had in being a board member, working with the various administrators and staffs here at Spotswood, realizing that this will be my last meeting at Spotswood as a board member. It is a bittersweet night, but with the grandkids coming, I still have a vested interest and will stay involved with what's going on in the future of this school. And thank you all for being here tonight, particularly the students. And I hope you take something away from our meeting tonight. We will move into action items, and board members, we do need to approve our minutes, and I will entertain a motion in that regard if it be your desire.
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is 5-0. Field trips, Dr. Scheichel.
Board members, you have 1 field trip for your approval. This is Spotswood High School's One Act group, this January 12th to January 15th, 36 students to Shenandoah University for the One Act competition, and I recommend approval of this field trip.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Board members, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a motion in support? Thank you, Mr. Cross. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Any questions or comments?
Dr. Scheichel, would you have any, the students are competing during this?
Yes.
Would you have any
I
idea
believe so.
when they're competing?
I do not know, but we'll get that information
Can
to
you
you.
get
I'm
that
assuming
to
it's a
us?
competition. Rad would know more about that. It's at Shenandoah University, so it's not far, right? So
Yeah.
that'd be a great opportunity to see that, but I will find out for you whether it's actually a competition or a workshop, but I believe it's a competition. But I'll get that for you. And also, if they are competing, what their time slot would be.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the superintendent's recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is 5-0 as well. A bid recommendation for pumps for Broadway High School addition. Mr. Reed.
And it is the competition, by the way.
Yes.
Dr. Scheichel, Mr. Breed, and members of the board. I've got a rather unusual bid recommendation this evening. The bid for pre-ordering the chilled water, hot water, and variable frequency drives for Broadway High School addition was probably specified and advertised. We had 3 firms that we sent the bid package to, and 2 firms responded with bids, as you can see. Our recommendation is to award the bid to the low bidder, TLA Incorporated, which then will be assigned to the yet to be determined general contractor for the Broadway High School addition. The reason for this is that the long lead time of these pumps, if we waited till the contract was awarded to the general contractor after the first of the year or 1st of February would not allow the project schedule to happen, and this cannot be done the first summer, which is a necessity for the addition. So we are pre-ordering these pumps, and then we'll assign these pumps then to whoever is the low bidder. It'll be part of the bid package that will go out, and it'll be clearly stated in that.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, as always, for thinking ahead and making these things happen, even though, you know, it takes a little bit of a different process, but to make sure that these things can be done on time. So always appreciative of everything you do. I do recommend that the board award the bid to the low bidder, TLA Inc., as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Mr. Reed, is there a motion in support of the recommendation?
I move that we award the contract for pumps at Broadway High School to the low bidder as presented by Steve Reed.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Any questions or comments?
I assume that these are comparable pumps to each other. Are they're not the same pump, though, or they're not the same systems, right? Does that make sense?
No, I don't understand your question.
Okay, really what my question is, there's something really loud in this auditorium. There's a rumble.
Yeah.
Will these produce, are both of these comparable on the rumble?
What you're hearing here is the air handler,
Uh-huh.
which is scheduled to be replaced over the Christmas break. So that's what you're hearing here. So no, these pumps won't make that noise.
Okay, good. Neither one of these pumps will make that noise.
No.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you. That's the real question.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is 5-0 as well. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Reed. Policy revisions, Dr. Aldifer.
Chair Breeden, members of the board, Dr. Scheichel. I'm standing in for Marcy Williams this evening. We do have a total of 6 policies that are up for revision and 4 policies that are going to be deleted from our policy manual. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but we do recommend that those be approved this evening.
I recommend approval of these policy changes as presented.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Scheichel. And these were policies that were presented for our information the meeting prior.
Correct. Right.
Do I hear a motion in support of the superintendent's recommendation? I will move that we support the superintendent's recommendation. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is 5-0 as well. Thank you, Dr. Aldifer.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to information items, and we will begin with the 2022 Family and Consumer Sciences Day proclamation. Ms. Drew. And Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. McQuilkin, that bling is blinding me a little bit. Could you turn that just a little bit? No, I'm just messing with you. Chair Breeden, school board members, and Dr. Scheichel, Family and Consumer Science is an extremely popular and valuable CTE program that we have at all 4 high schools, all 4 middle schools, and Rockingham Academy. In case you're not familiar with the program, the purpose of that program is to develop skills for life. And we have some students back here going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. But they develop skills for life. They learn about financial management. They learn about parenting, nutrition, independent living, culinary skills, workplace readiness skills, and a whole lot more. Tonight we have 2 of our outstanding teachers for FCS programs, Jen Stroop, and Jim, would you come? Jim teaches at Elkton Middle School, and Ashley Cromer, who teaches between RA and Turner Ashby. They're here with some of their students and they're going to tell you a little bit more about why this upcoming month is so special for Family and Consumer Sciences. And then the students are going to tell you a little bit about what's happening in FCS, Family and Consumer Sciences, and the co-curricular, the integral co-curricular organization, FCCLA. Ms. Stroop, I'm going to let you introduce those guys and tell us a little bit more.
Thank you.
thank you, school board members, Dr. Scheichel, Mr. Fitzgerald, for going along with my request to read the proclamation and asking my kids to come and give a presentation. They're pretty nervous, but I know they're going to do well. This Saturday is Family and Consumer Sciences Day, where we celebrate the anniversary of the founding of Family and Consumer Sciences and all the wonderful things that FCS does. So I'm going to let them come up, and they're going to run the show. I'm going to introduce them. Hannah Frazier is an 8th grader. She's our president. These are all officers in our FCCLA organization at Elkton Middle School. Rowan Crenshaw, Abby Shiflett, Kennedy Eppard, and Sutton Swecker.
Hello, we are students from Elkton Middle School Family and Consumer Science classes and the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America Student Organization. Tonight we are going to talk to you just a little about what Family and Consumer Science is and why it is so important in today's world. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
What is Family and Consumer Sciences? Family and Consumer Sciences is the field of study that empowers individuals and families across the lifespan to manage the challenges of living and working in a diverse global society, focusing on families, careers, and communities and how they interact. Family and Consumer Sciences is the only class with family as its central focus. FCS is also known as the People-Centered Sciences. We'd like to share with you a quick clip about Family and Consumer Sciences.
When someone prepares a nutritious meal,
balances a household budget,
creates a fashion design,
or takes care of a child or aging parent,
they might have a Family and Consumer Sciences educator to thank for it.
FCS educators impact individuals, families, and communities every day.
That's because we specialize in teaching the science and art of living and working well.
Say yes.
Say yes to FCS. Explore career paths today at fcsed.net.
Consumer Sciences classes and FCS teachers more important now than they ever were. There are approximately 5 million FCS students in the United States. That's 5 million students learning to make informed decisions about their well-being, relationships, and resources for a better quality of life today and in all of their tomorrows. It's time to elevate FCS and all the important work of the family community, the family and consumer science professionals who are on the front lines helping others develop essential skills to live and work in a complex world.
We hear all the time about the need for Adulting 101 classes, and the reality is those classes never left. They are alive and well in schools across the country. We are so lucky in RCPS to have a superintendent, school board, and administrations that value our career and technical education classes like Family and Consumer Sciences. The FCS teachers in Rockingham County work hard to not only teach us important life skills that will help us be successful family members, career-driven individuals and community leaders, but also to let us know that all the opportunities available to us is what we say yes to FCS and choose an FCCLS field of study in college. We'd like to share one more video clip about FCS educators with you.
I said yes to FCS because when I was in high school, I found my place in my Family and Consumer Sciences classroom.
I'm saying yes to FCS education because I believe so strongly in its value in today's society.
I love being an FCS teacher because of the relationships that I form with my students. FCS is where I belong.
I teach real-life skills, which gives me the opportunity to watch my kids grow.
FCS is just one big happy family, and I want to be a part of that.
You have now become part of a very important family.
I said yes to FCS because this was one area where I know I could make a difference.
I really gained leadership skills that showed me a passion that I didn't know I had.
I get to give my students hands-on skills for life.
This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to inspire people.
I loved my family and consumer science classes in high school. I love working with kids, so it was a perfect fit.
I love being an FCS teacher because of the kids. Every day there's something new.
We challenge you.
You.
To say yes.
Yes.
Yes. To FCS.
To FCS. To FCS.
We challenge you to say yes to FCS.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
As you have heard, Family and Consumer Sciences is no longer your grandma's home economics class. During FCS class, we have covered many different topics, including the FCCLA, student organization, workplace readiness skills, leadership, community involvement, human development, family and peer relationships, living environments, kitchen and safety and sanitation, nutrition and wellness, consumer and family resources, finances, textiles, fashion and appearance concepts, sewing, child development and child care, and identifying careers.
At Elkton Middle School, the program has gone from part-time to full-time. Ms. Droop tries to cook with each class at least once a month, and every grade level creates a different sewing project. We take the field trips to child care centers, complete a comparison shopping scavenger hunt at Target, enjoying a cooking demonstration at Kyoto's, and practice our etiquette on a countrywide etiquette field trip.
As part of the co-curricular student organization, Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, Elkton Middle School has one of the largest middle school chapters in our area. We are extremely active, holding monthly membership meetings, going on almost every field trip offered, competing in star events, competitions, and placing in star events at the state and national level. This past summer, EMS had 2 students, Avery Hobart and Breland Williams, place first in the national in their star events category, event management. We are working hard to have many students attend this year's conference and compete once again in star event competitions.
To celebrate Family and Consumer Science Day and FCCLA at the table, which encourages members to plan, prepare, and share healthy meals with their families. This Friday, EMS FCCLA is sponsoring a FCCLA Family Fun Night, where members will eat dinner with their families and take part in different family-friendly activities. At the end of the night, each family will have a packet to take home full of family activity ideas for the next year, as well as a conversation starters at the dinner tables. We thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our presentation about family and consumer science in today's schools. We hope you all have learned a little more about FCS and the importance of it in today's society. Have a wonderful evening.
So it is now my pleasure to make a proclamation related to Family and Consumer Sciences. This is the Family and Consumer Sciences Day proclamation. Whereas the profession of Family and Consumer Sciences had its beginning as home economics in 1899 when Ellen Swallow Richards, the first female graduate and faculty member of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, blazed a path using scientific knowledge to address the plight of families with regards to water quality, food safety, and safety of home environments. And whereas, building on its strong foundation, Family and Consumer Sciences continues to use the family as its central focus, thereby expanding its content base to meet the ever-evolving needs of that entity. And whereas Family and Consumer Sciences integrates the content areas of food, nutrition and wellness, human development, personal and family finance, family relations, housing and interior design, textiles and apparel, and consumer issues to equip and empower individuals and families to manage the challenges of living and working in a diverse global society. And whereas Family and Consumer Sciences professionals help people develop the essential knowledge and skills to lead better lives, be work and career ready, build strong families, and make meaningful contributions to our communities. And whereas Family and Consumer Sciences professionals work in careers as diverse as secondary and higher education, extension outreach, family and child services agencies, consumer protection, retail business, and as entrepreneurs. And whereas the conditions impacting individuals and families today are at an all-time high, which heightens the role of family and consumer sciences professionals to use evidence-based approaches to help people lay the groundwork for long, healthy, and successful lives. Whereas policymakers and the public in general need an awareness and understanding of the relevance of family and consumer sciences in addressing many of the problems facing individuals, families, and communities. Now, therefore, I, Oscar Scheichel, Superintendent of Rockingham County Public Schools, do hereby proclaim Saturday, December 3rd, 2022, as Family and Consumer Sciences Day in Rockingham County, and I urge all citizens to participate in the activities planned hereforth. Thank you.
Thank you. Challenge accepted. I'm not going to embarrass this individual tonight, but to tell you about the great work that these classes and these organizations are doing. One of these young ladies is my daughter-in-law's sister, and I remember when she would come to our house to swim in the summer as a small child and was very shy and didn't want to talk or intermingle that much, and I was just sitting here with pride tonight to watch her participate in this presentation. So thank you all for the great work that you're doing and for a great presentation. All right, the Inquiry Design Model and RCPS, Mr. Dickinson.
As you know, Mr. Breeden, you had asked at the last board meeting that we include additional presentations about our education projects. Mr. Cross had asked about this specific one as well, and so I thought it was you saw earlier what our students are engaged in and how they research, and this is another one of our approaches in Rockingham County that has been led by Mr. Dickinson, and so I asked him to present about the inquiry design model today. So I'm looking forward to your presentation, Mr. Dickinson.
Happy to. This is for years of social studies education. This is something that gets me quite excited. It is long overdue in our field and our discipline, and it really marks a change in more engaging instruction. So Chair Breeden, Dr. Scheichel, and members of the board, it gives me great pleasure to speak tonight about the use of inquiry in our social studies classrooms. Simply stated, inquiry is just posing questions to trigger curiosity and as a basis for research and investigation. The inquiry method is certainly not a new idea, as this dates back to the work of philosopher and educational reformer Dr. John Dewey during the early 1900s. And of course, Dewey was just merely the modern context for the Socratic inquiry that, of course, dates back to ancient Greece. So not a new concept, but a spin on something that's essential to the human experience. However, some of you may be aware of the recent resurgence of this method in what is known as the inquiry design model that was developed by Drs. Kathy Swan, John Lee, and S.G. Grant. Their book was on the title slide there of the presentation. That's otherwise known as the inquiry design model, known to many teachers as simply IDM for short. It is simply a structure for a lesson and a unit plan that is themed and framed around a central, compelling question. IDM is not necessarily a curriculum of any particular content. It is simply a teaching method that ensures deeper learning by challenging students to develop claims based upon supporting evidence. Unlike a multiple choice test, which we take a lot of, and they do have a time and a place in education, but in social studies, historically, they have taken the lion's share, so to speak. So we're trying to achieve some balanced assessment, so to speak. A multiple choice has one correct answer that is typically fact-based, as you know. In inquiry, you can have a multitude of answers that a student can develop based upon how well they can defend their arguments. So there's a lot of agency and independence where students can really develop their own opinions and defend them based upon the evidence that they offer. So let me go ahead and point out on the screen there, that's the inquiry design model. That's the lesson plan that teachers would fill in. And as you can see on that lesson plan, IDM provides a structure to support inquiry through 3 essential components. So if you see just below where it says standards, you see the 3 columns that are listed there. Within each of those 3 columns, you have 3 essential building blocks if you want to do inquiry in social studies. Those building blocks are simply 1, questions, 2, tasks, and 3, sources. So questions, tasks, and sources. Now I can sit here and expound upon this further, but I think there is no better way to learn deeply about inquiry than actually doing one together. So if we could advance the slide, I realize that this could be a little bit unconventional for a school board meeting, but the true strength of inquiry is student engagement. So if you will indulge me, board, I'm going to ask you to pose as students this evening for a very brief foray into inquiry. So pardon me while we engage a little bit in learning about 4th grade Virginia studies. I partially chose this grade level in order to demonstrate that even 9 and 10-year-olds can do this work. So this is from an actual inquiry that our 4th graders did. So let's start with one of the building blocks of inquiry, and that, of course, is sources. A great way to make history tangible and hands-on is obviously through primary sources. This is a primary source. I have a video source direct from the source to share, and I would like to ask everyone to just take a moment, watch the video. It'll appear on the screen, and I want you to do one thing, and that is just make an inference about what you see and hear. Okay? There's no wrong answers here. And we could probably frame this as a thinking routine. Many of our classes in kindergarten as well as all the way up to 12th grade will use the thinking routine of what do you see, what do you think, and what does that make you wonder? And that's the basis for making inferences. So here we go. Let's go ahead and begin. And again, we'll call on you, so have an answer ready.
Thank you for all of your letters that you sent to me. I read all of them, and as I read your letters, my eyes began to tear up because I felt that you all were so sincere and meant what you said. What I like most about the letters is the fact that you wrote them from your heart. You expressed that because of Barbara's actions, it inspired you all to be brave and to stand up for what you all believe. Many of you said that you would speak out against bullying, which makes me feel so proud since I was a victim of bullying when I was in high school. Some of you said you would treat others the way that you would like to be treated, regardless of race. That really made me feel good. Just remember that one person can make a difference in this world, just as Barbara did. You all are the future of our country, and we are counting on you all to do what you can to make our country better.
So there's a primary source, a piece of oral history, and I'll model one. So I see a woman testifying, and I think I'm going to infer that this was emotional for her. So I'm going to ask board members, could I get some volunteers to make a similar inference? What do you think about what you saw? What can you infer? Can I get a volunteer?
I think that she was sincere and very moved by what she was reading by the students who sent her the letters in.
We could infer that she was sent letters from students and that she is responding very sincerely. Absolutely.
I would think that she's probably been touched personally by some experience that that was very troubling, that students would write to her about making it a better world.
This isn't just history, it's some of our, what we call hard history, challenging history, for certain. Any others?
Experienced it firsthand.
We can infer that she has firsthand experience. Yes, she's a woman of color, and she's obviously, we won't dare to guess her age, but she is from a certain generation that more than likely lived through those times. Yes, these are all wonderful inferences. Any others? She mentioned a name. Barbara. We can infer that she knows someone named Barbara. All right, let's go ahead and advance the slide. Very good. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause for our board for indulging in that. Thank you. For being students this evening. Everyone gets an A. But there's our inquiry. So questions, tasks, and sources. The question was, what inferences can you make? Our task was engage in a see, think, wonder. We would probably complete the chart if we were doing it in class, or we could just discuss it in this format. And you had a single source, which was a video clip. This, of course, is a very profound story. We'll go ahead and advance the slide to show. This is the story, if you're not familiar, of Prince Edward County, Farmville, Virginia, 1951, and April 23rd. A 16-year-old girl named Barbara, we just met her sister Joan, who was in the auditorium. In fact, Joan's pictured right up there on the bottom right. I was in a student presentation once with TA students, and they had that photograph. I'll never forget it. They had that photograph blown up, and we're doing a presentation, and Mrs. Johns Cobbs gets up and walks over and points herself out. So every time I see that photo, I'd go back to that moment. She says, "That's me in the 11th grade." But in a very profound moment in not just Virginia history, but U.S. history, her sister Barbara, who was 16, called forth a student strike in protest of Jim Crow education at the Robert Russo-Moton High School in the small rural town of Farmville in central Virginia. This, of course, evolved into the case of Davis versus Prince Edward County, and 3 years later, that case was combined with 4 others that went before the Supreme Court in 1954 as Brown versus the Board of Education. Take one last look at that photo. Those are all Prince Edward students in Virginia. Those are fellow Virginians of this Commonwealth, and if you add up the plaintiffs of Brown v. Board, that photo is 75% of Brown v. Board. This is a Virginia story more than it is any other. It's a national story, but it's a Virginia story too. So why we took a look at this in 4th grade Virginia studies. So let's go ahead and advance the slide. Here's an inquiry that our 4th grade teachers developed last spring. And like I said, an inquiry is based and framed around a compelling question. So the compelling question that our 4th grade teachers came up with was simply, how do the actions of Barbara Johns still inspire us today? And there's the Virginia Civil Rights Memorial that's on the grounds of our General Assembly and State Capitol. Let's go ahead and move on. So one beautiful thing about the instruction of the inquiry method is that it's backwards design. You notice that UBD symbol there at the bottom. That's a lot of work that we've done over the past couple years in Rockingham County. That stands for understanding by design. So thinking forward to what is the intended learning outcome and then backwards designing your curriculum from that point. That is embedded in an inquiry because the compelling question is the starter, it's the hook. It frames the exploration and the investigation for students, but in the end, that is the summative assessment where students will be assessed. So we know what the test is going to be, and then we plan the unit back from that end to ensure that our instruction prepares students for it along the way. That's good instruction, that's backwards design, that's best practice in not just social studies, but in teaching and learning. Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and advance the slide. It should be noted that these aren't just random choices, that these are rooted in standards. So if you look at the very top of, and I've blown it up there, the very top of the IDM format and a structure, you see standards and content. So it's rooted in the SOL. So we take the overall standard, we look at what is the most essential piece, the most essential understanding, and then frame the question around that understanding. So that's the ultimate learning outcome. Okay, let's move on. Thank you. And then if you would blow it up even further and go just a little bit further down the page, these are the 3 building blocks that I referenced earlier. Of course, questions, tasks, sources. But there's a series of questions to ask sources. So there's a 3-day and a 4-day inquiry. There's sometimes a 1-day inquiry, which we just did together as a group here. We did a little mini inquiry. But you notice that there is a horizontal alignment. You have a supporting question, a task, and a source. And then the following day, you have another supporting question, task, and source. So all of those will be complementary of one another. Of course, the supporting question is driven by the sources, supported by the sources, and then that informs what the formative task is going to be. All right, next slide. Then those increase in sophistication and rigor. So you start off, obviously, with a very broad question. In this case, with these Virginia Studies teachers, they just said, how did segregation impact Virginians? A very broad question, but essential context for those students to be able to understand that compelling question. And you notice, if you go to supporting question 2, it becomes a little bit, deeper. It's a deeper dive, it's more specified, and it's a little bit more rigorous. So the second question, if I can read it from here with these glasses, is who was Barbara Johns and what motivated her to take action? And then, of course, in supporting question 3, you get into what impact does that have today, okay? So not that these are events trapped in the past, but students will be able to think really broadly and really deeply about the significance of those events, not just memorizing that those events happened. But what does that mean for the present day? Obviously, that's supporting question 3 because that's the most difficult. So it increases in rigor, it increases in sophistication. That's good practice. And that's how this inquiry design method organizes instruction. It's a great structure. It's wonderful practice. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and move past that one as well. Those are some examples I thought to highlight with this particular one, but we're going to see the output of it here in a moment in a video. Let's go ahead and move on one more. To me, this represents, when I say CIA, I don't mean the Central Intelligence Agency. Of course, I chose this for another reason with the Washington Monument. C, I, and A are the 3 sides of the educational triangle. Everything we do, no matter if it's in social studies or in math or in English language arts or science, you have curriculum, instruction, and assessment. In the inquiry design model, you have all 3 coming together. You're building curriculum, you're designing instruction on how that curriculum will be enacted through instruction in the classroom and how it will be implemented. And then with your compelling question, you're returning to answering that in a summative fashion in how it will be assessed. The beautiful part about those formative tasks is that along the way, you notice that I described those as not summative, but within the inquiry, those are formative. So I know the board knows, but for the sake of the audience, formative assessment is students, those are the types of assessments that we will not grade you on. Those are your opportunities to demonstrate and to practice. Summative assessment is what goes into the grade book. So what we call that is obviously instructional scaffolding, the supports that keep the building up, and then gradually taking those supports away so that when students do have to perform on a summative, we've prepared them for it. And the inquiry design model embeds that scaffolding. 90% of an IDM is scaffolding and instruction. 10% is assessment. But it's a valid assessment because of the scaffolding that supports it. All right, next slide. It's all based around this essential document that is probably the most central to social studies. This was produced by our national organization, the National Council for the Social Studies, otherwise known as NCSS. It's the C3 framework, which means college, career, and civic life. And you see there's an arc there in the image on the cover of the C3 framework that is the inquiry arc, which is the essence of social studies instruction according to C3. So we'll go ahead and advance the next slide. We've been fortunate to work with one of the authors of the inquiry design model, and that is Dr. Kathy Swan. And if you notice, go ahead and click again. I think it'll highlight it here. The lead author of the C3 framework, which is considered the national social studies curriculum and one of the most significant pieces of work done in our field in the last 20 years. The lead author is Dr. Kathy Swan from the University of Kentucky. She's worked with Rockingham teachers to design their own inquiries, not to download them from the internet, but to write and author their own curriculum and implement it in the classroom. And we've had teachers spend their summers doing this in PLCs now, implementing them with their colleagues. And we spend our PLC days, which are of course new this year, talking about how those went, how we could modify them, how we could improve them. And it's been really great collaborative work amongst grade levels and subject areas. Let's go ahead and move on. Thank you, Greg. I thought I would give a little shout out to our Understanding by Design work as well, because UBD is so embedded in inquiry. We wrote this. This is our social studies teachers, as a part of our UBD work, had to come up with a North Star, which is kind of like a mission statement for social studies. So this is what we think social studies means to our teachers, and hopefully to our students. And it's worth reading. I'll read it out loud. The purpose of social studies education in Rockingham County Public Schools is to empower all learners to think independently and to take informed action as respectful, engaged, and productive members of society. That's our mission. Now let's look at our transfer goals. So if we would unpack that, let's go to the next slide and we'll see those. There's 4 transfer goals that we thought would apply to whatever grade level from kindergarten to 12th grade. Every student should be able to, 1, apply knowledge and draw conclusions about past, current, and future events that will unfold in the future, of course. Number 2, actively seek out information to take informed action as an engaged citizen. Number 3, evaluate the validity of information sources. So notice again the emphasis upon source work. And 4, respect and appreciate diverse perspectives. When I looked at that and I thought about all the IDMs and all the inquiries that we developed, the one for these 4th graders and Miss Johns, and looking at that particular history just rose to the top. I thought that clicked all 4 boxes. I'm going to demonstrate that here in a moment with sharing some student work. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. This letter gets me every time I read it. This is a young lady from Cub Run Elementary School. I'm going to try to get through this, but this is a 4th grade young lady. And she said, "That made me feel like I can change things no matter what age. I can try to change things I think are not right. It makes me think I have a voice." Wow, what a statement for a 4th grader. What I can do to be brave is to stand up to others when they are not being fair. Forgive me, I'm trying to read with my glasses. When they're not being fair, or tell a teacher or an adult. Barbara Johns was brave, and I want to be just like her. It couldn't have a better statement on the impact that this inquiry had on this particular student. But let's hear not only from them, let's hear from Mrs. Johns too, because our students wrote to her. The summative assessment was to write a friendly letter. I called Mrs. Johns Cobbs and I said, "We have this idea." I said, "Would you be willing to accept 800 letters from 4th graders?" And she said, "Of course." And we did not send her all 800, but we did send her a sampling of what students expressed. And here's her reaction to that. Let's go ahead and move on.
I want to say to you that my sister Barbara was a brave, courageous, and fearless young person who saw an injustice and decided to do something about it. She stood up for what she believed, and her actions on April 23rd, 1951, changed the course of the nation when, in 1954, the Supreme Court declared that segregated schools were unconstitutional. I just want you all to know that you can make a difference in this world. So I implore you all to continue to be good citizens and to stand up for what you believe. And may God bless you all.
Thank you so much for those amazing words and the heartfelt message. I can't wait to share this with students, that someone that they wrote to is communicating back a message. Someone that is a history maker, as well as someone that they wrote to individually. I can't tell you the power of that history lesson, and how real and important that will be for kids. So we're honored to have your time and attention and your willingness to speak about these events.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to do it because I felt those letters were very touching, and so I thoroughly enjoyed them.
I really appreciated your message to students about how they can have an impact, that this story doesn't end, of course, in 1951 or 1954 or in 1964, 65, that this is a story that's ongoing and that their generation will write future chapters of it.
Yes.
That's that message in particular is great to hear, not just to hear, but to hear from someone such as yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Apologies to the audience, you probably couldn't read our student work there, but the last one you may have, Hannah W. said in her salutation, she just simply said, "Thank you for changing the world." So it's a beautiful thing to see fourth graders, from the mouths of children, right? And just that sincerity spoke to a woman removed by several generations, and seeing them connect in such an authentic ways shows the power that inquiry can have in the classroom. Rather than just memorizing these events and regurgitating them on a multiple choice test, students truly captured the significance of what had transpired in their native state in 1951 and since. If we go ahead and move on to the next slide, there are, I think you have to click it on I think it's starting the video again. So there is a menu that we've developed. These are all the inquiries used in Rockingham County schools. They're all authored by Rockingham County teachers. Let's go ahead and move on to, so here's our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade menu that teachers choose from. Some of what you see, they only have 2 choices in 6th grade, so those are the 2 that they implement. But you notice in civics we have quite a few. This is an evolving project that will be continually added to, but the most empowering part of it is authored by our teaching staff and faculty, of course. Next slide to see our high school 9th through 12th grade inquiries. They're all listed there. If you'd like to look at them specifically, we could make those available. But these are assessments, of course, so these are not things that we will make available to students, I'm sorry, until you have them in the classroom. These are your tests. So that's it. I won't go into the details of these specific inquiries, just to highlight the method itself and this particular one that we found particularly empowering. Thank you very much, and I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions?
I got a few questions for you. Thank you for tonight.
Of alternative assessments, and they've actually replaced the traditional SOL. That dates back to a reform that was passed by the General Assembly, I believe. Forth. Since then, they have started to replace some of the high school SOLs with the opportunity to do IDM specifically. Now, they don't call it that because that's a trademarked product, but the idea, the concept is embedded in those inquiries that we've used in Virginia Studies and Civics and Virginia U.S. History. We've started to expand them across the board because it's just good practice. But yes, they are endorsed by the department.
They're by the Department of Education, they are endorsed by them?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
My second one is, can we share our inquiries with other CT teachers, and can we see what other teachers in Virginia are sharing throughout with the inquiries as well?
I mean, we've not made an effort to do that since these are assessments that we use in class. When other school divisions have asked to borrow them, of course, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we've not made them publicly available. That would be something that if another social studies supervisor said, hey, we've heard about your Barbara Johns inquiry, we'd like to use it, of course we would share it. But there's no formal means. Like you may be familiar with the C3 Teachers website, right, where you can post inquiries. We haven't done that with these just because they double as assessments.
Okay, and I know that the IDMs is with John Lee and Kathy Swan as their idea that actually through CT Teachers was John Lee created it himself. But what's our involvement, or what has been our involvement with C3 Teachers?
C3 Teachers has provided training on how to write an inquiry. So Kathy Swan and Emma Thacker, who actually teaches locally at James Madison University, has provided professional development to our teachers on how we develop these and author them and create them.
Okay. And I did recognize tonight, well, I'll talk about that later, but thank you. There, seeing that we've teamed up with John Lee with the IDM and C3 Teachers.
Not that I know of, but there's nothing preventing someone to take you click that link, it forces a copy into your Google Drive, and then the teacher can kind of make modifications to ensure that it reflects their teaching style and the needs of their students. So, I mean, there's nothing preventing anyone, and I wouldn't discourage the use of the website. I think it's a good website for sharing resources, but of course, teachers look at and interrogate resources before they enact them in the classroom, and we trust their professional judgment in doing that.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Other questions?
I'd just like to ask, back to the Farmville situation, and
that Mr. Folk is referring to is enacted in the spirit of Barbara Johns. Instead of teachers leading the field trip, we ask the students. I don't need my parents or an adult to guide me, although I could consult their guidance, and her parents were quite influential on her, but she decided to take action for herself as a young lady. So our Farmville tour guides is based upon that sense of student agency that they can, you know, as young adults, start to form their own opinions. And that's the essence of inquiry. It's based on your own personal opinion.
thank you.
I don't have a question, just a comment. When I was going through Rockingham County Public Schools, social studies assessment was all about multiple choice and regurgitate the information in essay form. And it wasn't until I was at JMU studying to be a social studies teacher by challenging those of us in his classroom to think and talk beyond the particular snippet or fact. And the thing I like about this is it does bring history to life. And it's something that, you know, I have found. I recently met one of the students that I student taught at Buffalo Gap who remembered something that we talked about, and that's been 40 years ago now, for crying out loud, you know? And so it's just exciting for me to see history brought to life in this fashion, and it'll certainly make us better educators for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I remember Dr. Hallman speaking here at Spotswood, and yes, I could testify to that fact too.
Yes.
He engaged a lot of 9th through 12th graders. So,
yeah.
And that was well after his retirement.
Good Georgian.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. All right. Policy revisions for information, Dr. Aldifer.
I hate following Bo Dickinson. This evening, we have for your information one additional policy. This is policy IIA, which is on instructional materials. This is a policy that is actually a state requirement that we adopt a policy. The criteria were set out by the General Assembly, and then the VSBA has created a policy that complies with those requirements. The policy is actually has two kind of distinct additions to it in the revision. One is a definition section, which is in the second page, which has quite extensive definitions. And then there is a section that outlines what is required as far as procedures go that the superintendent or staff and the superintendent need to create in order to support and be sure that all parents are informed. It specifically relates to notification of any instructional materials that are sexually explicit. And so there's criteria there in the procedures that we'll need to include. So again, the policy is here. This is for information now, and if there's any thoughts or changes, those are things that we would entertain at the next meeting whenever it comes before action. The piece that, again, we'll be doing also after that has been completed will be putting the procedures together. So that will be in place for next year in January. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Aldifer at this point? Thank you, sir.
Chair Bremen, I don't have any questions for Dr. Aldifer, but I had sent out an email to all the board members asking that we would add to the policy, and I want to read tonight what I sent to the rest of you guys because I never got a response back as of today. But I would like for the policy to also state that a school board member may inspect on request any instructional material used as part of a student's curriculum. There was an instance we had this past year where I had a few complaints from parents and asked Dr. Scheichel that I could see that instructional material, and he was really quick to get back with me, and I really appreciate that. But and he told me, he was advised by our attorney that individual school board members have no authority other than just like a parent would have that. And since I wouldn't be that child's parent, therefore I couldn't look at that curriculum without a board majority asking to see that curriculum. So I think that school board members, every school board member should have that capability of asking our division of any curriculum that we may want to look at from any teacher that teaches, and it doesn't have to come from a majority of the school board asking for that, but any elected school board official could ask to see that curriculum taught by any teacher that was taught. So I'd like to add that to this policy, and I wanted to state that tonight.
All right. I would just say in answer to that, I did get your email. The reason I didn't respond is because I read it as a suggestion as opposed to a question. But that would be something we would discuss when this policy is up for action as opposed to information tonight. So,
well, I didn't want to just bring it on like at the last minute, like we're getting ready to vote on it. I'm like, hey, I want to add this to it. So I wanted you guys to know. Sometimes you send out emails and people may not see it, and so since I didn't get any response from any of you, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that tonight, that that's what I'd like to add to this policy, and it's not a unreasonable policy to put in there.
Okay. All right, we will move to school board questions and answers. And I will, since we got you rolling there, Mr. Cross, we'll start with you.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. I've got quite a few things that I want to say tonight, but it's really based on the IDM that we just presented to us by Mr. Dickinson here tonight, because I've been actually looking into this over the past probably year and a half. Many of you aren't aware of this, and most of the community is not aware of this, but we were partnered with a collaboration called the Virginia Inquiry Collaborative Group. Now, the VIC was tasked to write anti-racist curriculum here in the state of Virginia. I first read about this through an article that the Federalist posted, and we were partnered with divisions such as Fairfax County, Albemarle County, which is a very liberal division as well, Charlottesville City, Virginia Beach, Madison County, and Powhatan County. Now, when Powhatan County found out about their school board their school was partnering with the VIC, their board, we had a board of supervisors that was here tonight, and I wish that would have been her view as well. But board of supervisor member from Powhatan County, Michael Byerly, who I have talking to one-on-one on the phone with, he held a joint session with his school board and with the board of supervisors of Powhatan County and asked very specific questions on why they were partnering with the VIC and these other school divisions in writing critical race theory-based ideology curriculum on anti-race curriculum here in the state of Virginia. There was a July school board meeting that actually here at Spotswood High School that Dr. Scheichel was asked this question by a community member, actually by a veteran that had asked him that, and Dr. Scheichel wasn't 100% forthcoming of our involvement with the VIC. I know this because during my campaign, I spent hundreds of dollars in FOIAs asking for our involvement with the VIC, with people like John Lee, with the IDM, which I wasn't really familiar with the IDM or with C3 teachers at the time. But it took some time to get into the process. But Dr. Scheichel basically said that our involvement with the VIC is that we attended a conference where we made 3 inquiry designs, which really are okay designs in which we made. There's nothing wrong with what we made with that. I wouldn't say that. But that is not 100% truthful in our involvement with the VIC. It was more than a conference in which we attended. It was something that we were a part of for well over a year, and we have ties to many of those who were 100% affiliated with the VIC. I don't want to get too deep into that tonight, but I do want to say that I do have I do have my concerns, and they're valid concerns, of us partnering with C3 teachers and with the IDM in and of itself, Mr. Dickinson, is really not a bad concept. At my Christian school at our church, be a great inquiry design model to do stuff like that, because we want our children to grow up and we want them to take on our ideologies in Christianity and to begin to go out into the world and make converts for Jesus Christ. Now, one thing we didn't really talk about a whole lot tonight with the inquiry design models is the fact that their end game with the IDM models is that children would be civically engaged in the curriculum in which they learn. So I would say to that, and the fact that majority of parents in Rockingham County aren't looking for their children to be activists once they learn about the curriculum, but they want their children to know all the history, the hard history of what's going on or what has gone on, but they don't want their children growing up to be civically engaged in the fact that they're going out and being activists within our world. And so that's where I have a problem with a lot of the inquiry models in that. And to go on with that, I do want to read something from C3 teachers. I got a few inserts that I do want to read tonight. Because it really does concern me that we are a part of this group with C3. Tonight you actually said that when I asked if our teachers were using any of the inquiry models with the C3 teachers, you said that you wouldn't discourage not using the C3 website with the Virginia Hub, which I have a very big problem with our teachers using the material with the C3 Virginia Hub, because the majority of the VIC curriculum that was made is on the C3 framework for teachers on the Virginia Hub. And so an inquiry like who is equal in the United States? This was a curriculum that was built through the VIC. John Hobson, which was the supervisor of Albemarle County History of Supervisors. And this was an inquiry that was made through the VIC. Now, as I said a while ago, one of the things that they want the children to do at the end of all this, and I'll add a link on my social media page sometime this week on this, but in John Hobson's, which Mr. Dixon, you're very familiar with who Mr. Hobson is. You guys are friends and involved in also the VSSLC as well, which is another legislative arm being able to influence curriculum in the state of Virginia. But there's a link I'll post with Mr. Hobson on NBC 29 talking about what their end game was with the VIC. And I know for many of you, you don't quite understand. This took me a year and a half to do the research on this. I make about $5,000 a year being a school board member. Just my work and my FOIAs and the time I've put into this is well worth spent on my time on the school board. And so there's a link I'll post that shows Mr. Hobson talking about what the end game was to the VIC anti-racist curriculum. And he shows 4 pictures at the end of that NBC 29 episode, and it shows kids who are actively civically engaged, and they're out in front of courtrooms, and they're out in the public holding up signs, and they're protesting, and they're being civically engaged like that. And it's very damning to see that's the output, that's what we want to see our children do at the end of this curriculum. And this is curriculum that our teachers, apparently, our supervisor wouldn't discourage them to go and to use. And so I want to read just a part of this curriculum that our teachers, according to our, well, if they wanted to, but this was part of curriculum that was made through the VIC, which is not a good organization for Rockingham County. The last of these complaints, however, is talking about our independence, but it says the last of these complaints, however, is one that reads, he has excited the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. The most famous document in American history really state all men are created equal, and then hypocritically proclaim right afterwards its first inhabitants are merciless Indian savages. Now, I'll say that tonight to bring up the fact that if a socialist agenda could get our generation to believe that our founding fathers are inherently evil, then they can also look at our founding documents, such as the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, and one day say these are created by racist white men who we need to get rid of. And these are things that I have trouble with as a school board member, that our kids could be taught this kind of curriculum made by the VIC. Now, I'll try to be real quick here, but this is my Facebook account as well. But this is by the C3 framework, okay? This is by them. This is in their own words. C3 framework, remember, this is something that John Lee, who made with Ms. Swan, made the IDM, the Inquiry Design Model, okay? He came up with the C3 framework. You can Google John Lee, and you can find in all his accomplishments the founder of the C3 framework, okay? So this is a article written, says teaching the C3 framework, making inquiry critical. It says critical theory is one of the predominant schools of thought in the social sciences. And examining how these unequal power relationships lead to privilege for some and oppression to others. Roots of critical theory. Although current ideas about critical theory are quite broad, most observers trace its roots to a group of intellectuals who founded the Institute for Social Research, known as the Frankfurt School, in Germany in 1920s. These thinkers sought to extend Marxist theory into the changing social, political, and economic landscape of the 20th century by talking about how culture and ideology encourage and sustain social inequality. Although their work was diverse and primary thrust focused on how modern capitalist societies acted as new and subtler forms of social control, these societies that this consumer culture helped to create an illusion of freedom that prevented individuals from seeing that they were not the autonomous actors they seemed to be. Although their specific societal critiques still resonate today, the Frankfurt School's extension of Karl Marx call to produce knowledge and to take action from the standpoint of the oppressed may be its greatest impact. Critical pedagogy. Critical theories emphasize on emancipation is most visible in educational practice through critical pedagogy. This approach to teaching and learning centers and analyzes lived experience of the participants, as we saw tonight, drawing inspiration from the writings of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire. Problems that face teachers and students in their effort to live just and ethical lives. Critical social studies pedagogy with citizenship education as its central mission and with content that allows for examination of past and current injustices, social studies should be a natural home for critical theory and critical pedagogy. The adoption of the C3 framework and the development of the inquiry design model offer a useful template for implementing a critical social studies pedagogy. Inquiry-based practices position students as creators of knowledge and, when appropriate, allow students to pursue questions that are in the next section. There are certain criteria that teachers should consider when attempting to make inquiry critical. When these for students the chance to identify social injustices, to build knowledge from the perspective of the oppressed, and to conceptualize action that disrupts the status quo. Thank you, Ms. I'm not done yet. I have one more. The concluding thoughts of this article, written by the C3 framework, says, in this article, we hope to make it clear that one must be purposeful when disguising a critical inquiry. It is not quite as simple as examining a topic, i.e. Jim Crow, Indian removal, same-sex marriage, the gender wage gap, Islamophobia, that would connect to social injustice issues. To truly stay with unjust social relations. To remain true to critical pedagogy, teachers should work to identify questions that are important to students' lives and that encourage them to reflect on the ways that they are either privileged or oppressed by social dynamics. And finally, to enact these concepts in the context of the IDM, the inquiry must ask critical questions, analyze sources from the viewpoint of the oppressed, and encourage action that can make a tangible contribution toward justice. At the footnotes says this: when we use subordinate social groups, i.e. women, racial, ethnic minorities, LGBTQ individuals, by dominant social groups, a sense of suffering. In other words, prejudice plus power equal oppression. Now, I'm going to end with this tonight. This is something, a link that I will post on there, came straight from the C3 framework, straight from what John Lee and the IDM and the whole process of what that is. And as again, the IDM in and of itself, not a bad thing, but having access to this through the C3 teachers and through, as Mr. Dickinson said tonight, that he wouldn't discourage his teachers to go on the Virginia Central Hub and to take these inquiries made We were part of this for over a year, well over a year, and our involvement with key players within the VIC is that I would ask the board tonight that this isn't some rabbit hole that Matt Cross is going down, but this is factual information that I have plenty more that I could share with you. But I'm asking that we would pull out of any work related with the C3 framework, seeing that its ideologies are based in critical race theory and Marxism, and that we would not have anything to do with that here in Rockingham County Public Schools. I suggest that tonight, that we would make a motion to do that. I know that many of you would not want to make that motion, but I would suggest tonight that we would do that and that we would pull our Ms. Lord?
I'm sorry, I don't. Oh, there you are, great. Hey, I didn't catch the names of the students that presented tonight. Would you happen to know them? And could you share them with us? Because I don't think they were mentioned. Violet Hallahan? Augusto, Tobar, Afonte, Carrie Ann Sheehan. Great. Thank you. Please in the house with us tonight yet. Bless you all for staying. And just thanks to all of our students, and have a great couple of weeks as we start the holiday season.
Dr. McQuilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Thank you, Mr. Breeden. I would like to say that this evening has been enjoyable and enlightening because we were here with the students, and it was wonderful. All the student presentations that we witnessed this evening, it just is, to me, very, very uplifting. This is what we're about, what our students are doing and what they're learning, and we thank. And so that's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Falk.
I'd just like in the meeting this evening, there was a lot of good information, a lot to give hope for our community as our students learn from very good teachers and very good programs, and how they will be, I look forward to them stepping out in society and making it a better community. And I would especially like to thank Mr. Dickinson for the work he has done over the years in exciting children about learning about history and the cause and effect of things. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Scheichel.
The VIC, which we still weren't part of from the beginning, as some allege, and all the FOIA requests show that, to for C3, I guess if we ban it, we'd have to figure out how to block the site, since it's simply a publicly available website. We'd have to tell teachers not to use it at home either, even though many of the inquiries on it are perfectly good examples of what teachers could adopt for Rockingham County to the IDM, which is a model. But then we took a detour to things like the Frankfurt School, although I doubt that many of the people who recently posted about that on Facebook ever read Habermas or Horkheimer or Adorno, all the way to Paulo Freire and his Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So it's quite the intellectual trip we took there.
That you was very much a part of.
Yep. Again, you show us.
You should be fired for lying.
It's Dr.
You should be fired for
us.
lying.
You're out of order.
Public for our involvement with the VIC.
You brought this up during your campaign, and I told you then that we were part of the VIC for a single year, that it resulted in the inquiries I released publicly, and all the bills that you got and all the timesheets clearly proves that we were only part of it for a year. And so, yeah, you can continue saying it. That doesn't make it any more correct.
I will post all my documents that I have showing on my social media account, so you can see that this is not some made-up story that I've made up, but I have documents such as this FOIA email here with your name attached with this, and our involvement, more than just a conference that we attended, which you said on this over a year ago. That was not the truth, yep. Dr. Scheichel, and
sure.
You know it wasn't the truth.
You
and
said
I will
it again
release
tonight.
This one again with many others, which you were fully aware of what we were going through, and seeing the homework that was even assigned to our teachers and those a part of the VIC with Dr. Dorinda Carter Andrews with the TED Talk. That's very damning information as well. Yep. And so I will post all the information I have. The public can come up with your thoughts of what you believe,
Right.
but I'm telling you that our superintendent he fully knew what our involvement was with the VIC, and it went a lot deeper than just attending a conference and writing 3 inquiries in which you stated just over a year ago here at Spotswood High.
Okay. Let me just say that I apologize to the students here for the behavior of certain members of this board. I think we're probably all better served when we're not fearful of hearing dissenting points of view, as long as they're done respectfully and presented respectfully. We do have reason to enter into closed meeting, and I will entertain a motion in that regard at this time.
I move that the board enter a closed meeting to discuss and consider the following pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, personnel, specific public officers, appointees, or employees, including the division superintendent, for the purpose of considering such individual's assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, salary, or resignation. A2, one or more particular students, specifically related to discipline and requests regarding compulsory school attendance based on religious beliefs that would involve disclosure of information contained in a scholastic record concerning a student. And A29, discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews of bidders or offerers, and the discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy.
Thank you, Ms. Lord. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I think that was a 5-0. I did not hear everyone, but I think that was a 5-0. So we will now enter into closed meeting. Thank you all for coming. Please be safe driving home.